a woman fell in love with a man she met online. He was perfect, attentive, real. So she went to surprise him, only to find out he died 2 years ago.
Lola was not the kind of woman who believed in shortcuts. She had worked for every single thing she owned: the small but neat apartment in Lekki, the marketing job that kept her phone busy from Monday to Saturday, the wardrobe she had built one carefully chosen piece at a time. She had built her life with patience and discipline, and she was proud of it. But love had refused to show up the same way. At 29, Lola had watched almost everyone around her pair off. Her younger sister had a husband and a baby. Her best friend Chisholm was engaged. Even her cousin Gozi, who once swore she would never settle down, was posting couple pictures from Santorini. And Lola, beautiful, hard-working, sharp-minded Lola, was still coming home to an empty apartment and a plate of reheated jollof rice eaten alone in front of the TV. It was Chisholm who finally convinced her to download the app. It was called Heartbreak, and it had been making waves in Lagos for months. Everyone was talking about it: the clean interface, the verified profiles, the matchmaking algorithm that supposedly used your personality type and daily habits to connect you with someone truly compatible. Lola had resisted it for a long time. She found the whole idea uncomfortable. The idea of selling yourself in a handful of photos and a short bio, waiting for strangers to swipe right on your face. It felt unnatural. It felt desperate. But Chisholm sat beside her one Friday evening, poured 2 glasses of wine, and would not leave until the app was installed and Lola's profile was set up. They laughed through the whole process, choosing her best photos, writing a bio that was honest without being boring, setting her preferences. By the time Chisholm left, Lola felt lighter than she had in months. Like maybe this was not such a terrible idea after all. She got her first match the very next morning. His name was Daniel Adeyemi, 34 years old, based in Victoria Island. His profile photo showed a man with an easy smile. Not the kind of smile that was trying too hard, but the kind that looked like it belonged there, like it had always lived on that face. He was well dressed without being flashy. In one photo, he was at what looked like a rooftop bar, glass in hand, the Lagos skyline glittering behind him. In another, he was in a suit, standing in front of a sleek office building. His bio was short: building things, curious about people, looking for something real. Lola told herself not to get excited. She had read enough stories. She knew how men could be online, charming and perfect until the moment they weren't. But Daniel was different from the very first message. He did not open with a compliment about her looks. He read her bio, actually read it, and asked her about the part where she mentioned that her worst habit was abandoning books halfway through. He wanted to know which book she had never been able to finish, and why. Lola had laughed out loud reading that message, sitting at her office desk with her untouched morning coffee going cold beside her laptop. She typed back, and from that moment, the conversation never really stopped. They talked every day. Morning messages that arrived before she even got out of bed. Voice notes in the afternoon when typing felt too slow. Late-night conversations that stretched past midnight, both of them refusing to be the first to say goodnight. He made her laugh in a way that felt effortless and genuine. He was thoughtful. He remembered small things she mentioned in passing and brought them up days later. He asked questions that made her think. He shared things about himself too, slowly and carefully, the way a person shares things when they actually trust you. He told her about his work. He ran a logistics and real estate consultancy, inherited from his father, who had passed away 3 years ago. He spoke about his father with a quiet kind of grief that Lola recognized immediately, because she had watched her own father carry that same grief for years after losing his brother. It was the grief of people who love deeply. It made Daniel feel real to her in a way that no profile photo or smooth bio ever could. Weeks passed, then a month, then 2. Lola had not told many people. She mentioned it briefly to Chisholm, who immediately started asking for pictures and pushing for a physical meeting. She said something vague to her mother, who responded with a prayer and a warning to be careful. But mostly, she kept Daniel to herself, the way you keep something precious before you're sure it won't break. She had asked him early on, why he had not suggested they meet. He had answered with the kind of honesty she wasn't used to. He said he had been hurt before, a relationship that moved fast and ended badly, and that this time he wanted to take things slow. He wanted to be sure that what was growing between them was real before he brought it into the physical world. He said she deserved something that was carefully built, not rushed. Lola had held her phone to her chest after reading that message and stared at the ceiling of her bedroom for a long time. She understood. She respected it. And if she was being honest, his caution made her trust him more, not less. By the third month, something had shifted between them in a way that was hard to explain. It was not just that she liked him anymore. It was that she thought about him the way you think about someone who is already woven into the fabric of your daily life. She thought about him when she saw something funny on the street and wanted to share it. She thought about him when she was eating somewhere new and wondered what he would order. She had begun to imagine, quietly and carefully, what it would feel like to finally sit across from him in person, to hear his voice without a phone between them, to see that smile in the same room. It was Chisholm who planted the seed. They were having lunch one Saturday when Chisholm looked at her and said that 3 months was too long. She said if this man was real and if he really felt everything he claimed to feel, then a surprise visit would only make things better. She said that a man who truly loved a woman would be overjoyed, not upset, to open his door and find her standing there. Lola resisted. But the seed had been planted. She had his address. He had given it to her weeks ago, mentioned it casually when they were talking about which parts of Lagos they each lived in. He had said he lived and worked from a property in Ikoyi that had belonged to his family for decades. Lola had saved the address without really thinking about why. She thought about it for 2 more weeks after that lunch with Chisholm. She changed her mind a dozen times. But one Thursday evening, after a long and particularly tender phone conversation in which Daniel said something so quietly sincere that it made her eyes sting, she made her decision. She would go on Saturday morning. She would show up. She would bring nothing elaborate, just herself, and maybe the chocolate chin-chin from the shop near her estate that she had once described to him and he had said sounded wonderful. She would ring the bell and she would finally see his face for real. She barely slept on Friday night. Saturday morning arrived bright and hot the way Lagos mornings do in that season. The kind of morning where the light is almost aggressive, bouncing off every surface and filling the air with the smell of dust and something green. Lola dressed carefully. Not too formal, not too casual. She did her makeup lightly because she wanted to look like herself, not like someone performing a version of herself. She bought the chin-chin from the shop, got into a rideshare, and typed Daniel's address into the navigation app. The driver was a quiet man who played gospel music at low volume. Lola sat in the back seat and watched Lagos slide past her window. She was nervous in the best possible way, the kind of nervous that lives right next to excitement, where the feeling could tip either direction at any moment. The navigation app took her toward Ikoyi. She recognized some of the streets, the wide ones lined with old trees, the ones where old money and new money lived beside each other without quite touching. She had driven through this area before for work meetings. But then the streets began to change. The big houses started to thin out. The trees got older and taller and less tended. The road narrowed, and the rideshare turned off the main road onto a path that felt like it belonged to a different time entirely. The driver slowed without being asked, as if he too could feel the change in the air. He glanced at the navigation, then out the windscreen, then back at Lola in his mirror. She told him to keep going. She checked the address on her phone. They were nearly there. The car stopped. Lola looked up from her phone and through the windscreen, and for a moment, her mind simply refused to process what her eyes were seeing. Because what was in front of her, sitting at the end of that narrow path, surrounded by trees so old they seemed to lean inward as if listening, was not a family home. It was not a gated compound or a beautiful old property or any of the things she had imagined. It was a cemetery. The gate was old iron, the kind that had gone the particular shade of rust that happens over decades, not years. The name was carved into the stone above it in letters that had once been sharp and were now soft with age. Inside, through the bars of the gate, she could see the tops of tombstones pushing up through overgrown grass. Trees heavy with shadows. The silence of a place that the living had stopped visiting regularly. The driver said nothing. He had switched off the gospel music without Lola noticing. She sat in the back of the car and did not move. Her first thought was that the address must be wrong. She opened her phone and checked it 3 times. The navigation app said she had arrived. She typed the address into a second app, a mapping app she used for work. It gave her the same result. She was standing, or rather sitting, exactly where Daniel's address said he would be. The logical part of her brain began running through explanations. Maybe Daniel had given her the wrong address by mistake. Maybe there was a property beside the cemetery that she was meant to find. Maybe he lived on the other side and this was just the closest pinpoint the app could find. There were explanations. There were always explanations. But her body was not listening to logic. Her hands had gone cold. The small package of chin-chin sat in her lap and it felt suddenly ridiculous. A small, cheerful bag of snacks brought to a place where no one ate anymore. She asked the driver to wait. She got out of the car. The gate was not locked. It pushed open with the kind of groan that old iron makes. Not dramatic, just tired. She stepped inside, and the temperature dropped the way it does in places with deep shade and heavy trees. The grass came up past her ankles in some spots. She picked her way through it carefully, her eyes moving across the tombstones. She was not sure what she was looking for. She told herself she was just checking. She told herself she would look around for a moment, find nothing, go back to the car, and call Daniel to laugh about the fact that his address had taken her to a graveyard. She was already half composing the message in her head, the way she would phrase it to be funny rather than alarming. And then she saw it. It was one of the larger tombstones, positioned near the center of the cemetery, beneath the broadest of the old trees. It was made of dark granite, and unlike many of the others around it, it had been maintained. The stone was clean. There were no weeds climbing its base. Someone, at some point not too long ago, had come here and cared for this particular stone. Lola's feet slowed, then stopped. Because on that tombstone, mounted in an oval frame of the kind that families sometimes use on graves to preserve the image of the person beneath, was a photograph. It was a man with an easy smile. Not the kind that was trying too hard. The kind that looked like it belonged. It was Daniel. Not someone who looked like Daniel. Not a similar face that her frightened mind was trying to fit into a shape she recognized. It was the same photograph that was on his Heartbreak profile. The same photo she had looked at dozens of times over 3 months. The same face she had been telling herself she would see in person on this very morning.
The name on the stone read, Daniel Oluwaseun Adeyemi.
Beloved son. Faithful friend. Gone too soon. Below the name were 2 dates, a birth year and a death year. He had died 2 years ago. Lola stood in front of that stone for a long time. She could not have said how long. The world had become very quiet around her. Not the comfortable quiet of a peaceful morning, but the kind of quiet that presses against your ears. The trees moved without sound. A bird called somewhere far above her, and the sound seemed to come from somewhere outside of time. Her legs eventually stopped holding her the way they should, and she sat down right there on the ground in front of the tombstone, in her carefully chosen Saturday outfit, with the chin-chin still in her hand. She thought about every conversation. She went through them in her mind the way you go through a drawer looking for something important. Quickly at first, then more slowly. She thought about the way he laughed. The way he remembered things. The grief in his voice when he talked about losing his father. She thought about how real he had felt. How impossibly, undeniably real. She sat there until a sound pulled her back. It was a woman's voice, coming from the gate of the cemetery. An older woman, perhaps in her late 60s, was standing at the entrance with a small bunch of wildflowers in her hands, watching Lola with an expression that was more sad than alarmed. The woman walked toward her slowly. She looked at the tombstone. Then she looked at Lola. Then she sat down on the edge of a nearby stone and sighed, the sigh of someone who had carried something heavy for a long time and had gotten used to the weight. She said that Lola was not the first. She said that Daniel had been her son, her only son, that he had died in a road accident on the Lagos-Ibadan expressway 2 years ago in November, returning from a business trip. She said he had been a good young man, warm, generous, the kind of person who collected friends everywhere he went. She said the grief had nearly ended her. Then she said that about 4 months ago, strange things had started to happen. Women had begun appearing at the cemetery. Young women, beautiful women, women who arrived looking for an address, holding their phones, confused and frightened. And when she spoke to each of them, they told her the same story. They had met a man on a dating app, a man who called himself Daniel Adeyemi, a man who used her son's photograph. And at some point, each of these women had decided to find him. And each of them had found their way here instead. She did not know how to explain it. Her pastor said one thing. Her older sister said another. The women in her prayer group had their own interpretation. She herself no longer tried to make sense of it. She had stopped asking why and started asking only what she was supposed to do. What she did was this. She came to the cemetery every Saturday morning with flowers. And when a woman arrived looking confused and afraid, she sat with her. She told her the truth. And she prayed for her because she believed, with the tired and unshakable faith of a woman who had already lost the thing she loved most, that her son's spirit was not trying to harm anyone. She believed he was simply doing, in whatever way the dead are able to do things, what he had always done in life. He was collecting people, drawing them in with warmth and care and genuine attention, the way he always had. And then, when they were close enough, he was letting them see what they had almost missed. The old woman reached out and took Lola's hand between her own 2 hands. They were warm hands, soft and dry in the way of hands that have done a lot of living. She told Lola to go home. She told her to take care of herself. She told her that whatever had brought her to this point, the loneliness, the hope, the courage it took to get in that car on a Saturday morning and go looking for someone she cared about, none of that was wasted. None of it was foolish. All of it was evidence of something good still living inside her. She told her that the right person was still out there. Lola walked back through the old iron gate and got into the waiting car. The driver looked at her in the mirror but asked nothing. He just turned the gospel music back on, low and steady, and pulled away from the curb. She held the chin-chin in her lap the whole ride home. When she got back to her apartment, she sat on her bed for a long while without doing anything. Then she picked up her phone. She opened the Heartbreak app. She looked at Daniel's profile, still there, still smiling, and she took a screenshot of it. She reported the account. She sent the screenshot to the app support team with a message explaining everything she knew. Then she put the phone down and cried. Not because she was frightened, though she had been. Not because she felt stupid, though she had felt that too, sitting there on the ground in a graveyard in her best Saturday outfit. She cried because something in that encounter had moved something inside her, shifted it loose after years of it being stuck in one place. She had spent so long protecting her heart that she had almost forgotten what it felt like to let it reach toward something. Even in the reaching, even when the reaching turned out to be toward a ghost, toward a dead man's smiling photograph on a polished stone, she had felt more alive than she had in years. That, she understood, was what the old woman had been trying to tell her. Chisholm called that evening. Lola told her everything, slowly, from the beginning, while Chisholm sat in silence on the other end of the line making small sounds of disbelief. When Lola finished, there was a long pause. Then Chisholm said that Lagos was not a city for the faint-hearted. That it would test you in ways no textbook could prepare you for. That it would send you looking for love and route you through a cemetery just to make sure you were serious. Lola laughed. It came out longer and louder than she expected, the kind of laugh that has tears mixed into it somewhere. The kind that is also a small release of something that had been held too tight for too long. She deleted the Heartbreak app that night. But she did not delete the belief that she had rediscovered, sitting on the ground in front of a granite tombstone while Lagos hummed on around her. The belief that she was not too late. That her heart, for all the years she had worked so hard to protect it, was still in good working order. Still warm. Still willing. Still ready. And somewhere in the city, in some office or kiki or corner shop or traffic jam on the 3rd Mainland Bridge, someone real was out there. Someone whose smile belonged on his face. Someone who remembered small things and asked real questions and was ready, the way she was now ready, for something that was carefully built and not rushed. She would find him. Or he would find her. But either way, she would no longer be afraid to look. Some doors in this life look like wrong turns. But every road Lola walked, even the one that ended at a graveyard, was leading her somewhere true.